Hello, hello. Ron Callis here with another episode of Automation Unplugged. I hope you're having a great day. Today is Wednesday, April 22nd, or not 22nd. Today's April 21st. And it is a few minutes after 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I am going to jump over here to Facebook just to make sure that, in fact, we are streaming and we are coming in live. So bear with me here as I click over and make sure that that is the case. Yes, it does look like we are coming in loud and clear. So that's positive. Now I'll warn you in advance. My video, as I was getting prepped and set up with my guest Kris, my video and my audio did drop out for some reason. So if that happens, just bear with me, and I'll do my best to get it reconnected. And I'm hopeful and optimistic it'll be we'll have a good time here. Now, my guest today is, I want to say, maybe one of the more interesting people. All of my guests are fun and interesting. But if you're into cloak and dagger and into security and the world of intrigue and mystery out there, my guest is he's going to be a lot of fun for you to listen to and learn about. It goes back into the early days, or my guest and I met many years ago, back in the early days of Firefly Design Group, when we were doing consulting and technology system design for not only for integrators, but we were doing that type of work for high net worth individuals and families around the world. And we were often in a role consulting and advising for, end users and or through their representatives. And often in those cases, there was the need for a security consultant or a security advisor. And my research ultimately led me to this individual and his company. And his company has continued down that path. And we're going to talk a lot about the fun and interesting things they're doing today. But that was the way he and I got to work together. And I really got to see the professionalism and the expertise. And I was in awe because I just find that stuff so interesting. So my guest is Kris Coleman. He is the founder and president and CEO at the firm called Red 5. And they are a world-class, state-of-the-art security and protective intelligence services company. And so Kris is going to tell us exactly what that means. And I also recently picked up Kris's latest book and was reading through that, and we'll be discussing that as well. But let's go ahead and, without further ado, let's bring in Kris, and let's get this interview started. Kris, how are you, sir?
Hey, Ron. I'm great. Thanks. Appreciate you having me.
Hey, no, it's my pleasure. You and I have been connected for a long time on LinkedIn, and I'm always reading your posts and seeing your content. And I saw that you had come out with your latest book last year, and I reached out, and your people and my people got us where we are today. So I'm glad that happened.
Great stuff. Great to be back connected and seeing what you're up to too. Awesome.
Well, I things are a little bit different now. We're no longer doing that engineering stuff. You and I worked on some projects together.
Yeah.
And we've moved on from that, and we're now squarely doing marketing. But marketing for the same technology integrators that I've spent my 20-year career working with and serving. So there is that. But tell us about Red 5. I gave a bit of a description from the bio I have here.
Right.
If you don't mind, give us what is Red 5?
Yeah. So Red 5 came out of what was at the time about a 15-year career at both CIA and the FBI. And so I had originally, found myself in college trying to figure out what I was going to do for, when I grew up, and had a bunch of different majors and found myself at a job fair talking to the CIA representative. And I'm like, this could be pretty cool. I always liked, international intrigue and foreign affairs. I was involved in, reading a lot about that and staying up on current events. So I signed up, and not even graduated from college. I was working at the CIA and spent a lot of time with them, going through all the training down at the farm and going through a lot of different experiences with them, getting ready to deploy overseas and really operate as an intelligence officer. And I was very, very fortunate to spend about, at least initially, about 8 years with the CIA. And it was a tremendous experience running around a bunch of different countries, learning about different cultures, obviously working national security issues, furthering the whole mission of CIA and collecting intelligence.
I'm going to ask the silly question.
Sure.
How much do the movies get right?
There's a few movies that are quite good, and then there's a lot of them that really take it to the edge, right? So the artistic license is very pervasive out there, but it's all good and fun. I would say probably a lot of it is a lot more boring than what Hollywood puts out there. But the reality is, the mission couldn't be more important. The places we find ourselves are highly, are extremely volatile. They're dangerous, but we're doing things that have to be done in order to collect information to keep our policymakers well informed. And it's been a tough 20 plus years. I joined in '90. So now we're 30 years since I joined. The mission has changed a little bit because of the nature of the threats that are out there. A lot of threats now are really asymmetric in nature, meaning they're kind of coming at us as sort of a post-Cold War environment where there's terrorism, weapons of mass destruction. Now there's cyber warfare, and all of which can be really carried out by singletons or small teams or small cells and have a massive impact, negative impact on our society and our U.S. interests and our allies' interests. So it's a tough job. It's thankless. And, a lot of my colleagues over the years have lost their lives in service, at CIA. And my hat's off to them for giving the ultimate sacrifice, and their names will never be known. There'll be another star on the wall at CIA headquarters. So great experience at CIA, and my first of 2 rounds there, when I wrapped up my time doing protective operations. I was overseas for a number of years, but then came back and was focused on protective operations, and that was keeping me very busy until I joined the FBI.
Did the FBI recruit you to join them, or did you find something at the FBI that, from a career path, that you found interesting?
It's a great story because they. All my FBI Quantico classmates all thought I was a planted mole in my FBI class, and of course you're coming over, you're still working for CIA. But the reality was, no, I found a path there that was attractive to me because there was more opportunities domestically to use my skills, and so not only did I already have some international experience, but there was an opportunity for me to be involved in some domestic work. And it was, just a typical career choice. Let's try something different. And that landed me in San Francisco. And I was working in San Francisco, working international organized crime and dealing a lot with terrorism. Started out with working Russian organized crime, which was a very busy environment in San Francisco at the time. But then, obviously, my background lent me more towards going towards terrorism and international affairs, and so I found myself working international terrorism out of the Oakland, resident agency there, so Oakland RA. And then 9/11 hit, and as being a part of the SWAT team there in San Francisco on the FBI SWAT team, we responded on 9/11, and unfortunately, those aircraft, one of which was supposed to land at San Francisco, ended up going down in DC. So just tragic day.
You were deployed to be on the receiving end of the hijacked airplane that was on its way to San Francisco, or at least that was the flight plan.
That's correct. Yeah. So we were waiting, but obviously didn't receive that. tragic aircraft. But we ended up having other missions almost immediately in the Bay Area, dealing with leads that that sprang from the 9/11 investigation, and so that kept us very busy for a couple of years, running out the millions of leads that came in on the 9/11 case. And on that 9/11 case, I was fortunate to be co-case agent in San Francisco and trying to help tackle what was one of the greatest tragedies in U.S. history. So tough time for a lot of people, tough time for the country, but we bounced back as you would expect we would.
Yeah, we're resilient. I was reading that in your book.
Exactly. Yeah, and I was fortunate. It took us out to Salt Lake City for the Olympics, which was obviously an extremely high security environment post 9/11. And that was another great experience. That actually was my second Olympics that I had worked. I'd worked, third technically. So I supported Barcelona from headquarters. But then I actually deployed to Lillehammer, Norway with the agency to support that Olympics. And then, so Salt Lake was my third that I'd worked. And great experience with FBI SWAT working there in Salt Lake.
Is your job when you're, quote, working the Olympics, is it to protect the athletes? Is that the objective?
It's athletes and venues. And our mission specifically in Norway was counter-terrorism oriented and intelligence oriented. Our mission in Salt Lake was very specifically to do, as a member of the SWAT team, was to respond to any incident in our sector. Specifically, we were down near Soldier Hollow, which was the cross-country skiing venue. And so our team was deployed down in that area to be ready to respond to any kind of incident at the facilities or to deal with, an issue with athletes.
Got it. And at what point did you make the decision? Because it had to be a pretty big decision from going from government, to work for the government to go to the private sector. How did you decide to do that? Yeah,
so actually I went back to the agency before I left for the private sector. So
okay,
my wife was still at CIA, and so but the Bureau was intent on me staying in the West Coast, and I was intent on getting back to my wife on the East Coast, and so made my way back by being rehired back into the agency, and where I worked weapons of mass destruction, and then I also worked challenges with terrorism and getting into training our allies on how to counter terrorism overseas. So that last couple of years was very busy on the travel front. I think I hit 60-something countries in a couple of years. But tremendous experience working with different cultures, different agencies, different intelligence agencies, law enforcement agencies around the world. And that's where I was actually recruited out of the government, was to go work for a private family. And that was really the beginning of Red 5. Was I formed the LLC in order to be able to do other things. And soon, about, I don't know, not even 9 months after I did that, I was recruited out to work for a private family. And I spent solid year rebuilding their entire program. And then that's when Red 5 was really sort of formulated as, this is going to be a company that solves problems for unique clients. I mean, it's what I had been doing for most of my government career. So the same concept played right into Red 5. And how would Red 5 do that? Was by consulting, by understanding the challenges that our clients are facing, whether they're a high net worth family or they're a corporation or perhaps a philanthropic organization that had some challenges. And then we would craft the right solution. That was when I wrote one of my first pieces, which was Protective Intelligence Methodology for Executives, the PRIME methodology. And that played into the Red 5's initial sort of start. And it's been a lot of fun ever since. We've supported, I think, more than half of the Forbes 20 at some point in our history. We worked on 6 of the 7 continents. We're still angling for Antarctica. Maybe I'll get that next year. But does it count if you travel with one of your clients to Antarctica? Does that count as operating on Antarctica? I think I'd count that. So we're gonna make that a real experience at the end of this, and take everybody.
Yeah, I like that.
Take everybody down south. That'd be great.
Now, I have a very abstract question, only because you said you worked weapons of mass destruction, and obviously that sounds mostly terrifying. And just to appropriately terrify the audience, how small of a package could a weapon of mass destruction be put into that would do harm, say, to a city?
Well, I mean, there's a variety of different, delivery methods, and there's a variety of different actual, weapons that could be, or items that could be weaponized, right? So you're talking about nuclear, radiological,
That's probably what I'm
high
thinking about. I
explosive.
don't know. I'm going back to my movie
Right.
references. Like,
Yeah.
is it true like a suitcase could, do a lot of damage? Like a suitcase
There's,
size
yeah. I
something?
mean, if you're getting into biologicals, I mean, there's a lot of question about this current situation we're in. There's questions about, what could be spread around anthrax. If you recall, after 9/11, we had the anthrax attacks. Those are delivered in an envelope, so those can be quite small and be considered a weapon of mass destruction when distributed across
That's true.
different locations. So biological, chemical. We had a nerve agent attack in Japan. Back in I think it was
The subway.
the 90s. Yep, Aum
I remember
Shinrikyo
that.
was the terrorist group that did that. Again, small delivery, but big impact, right? So, but the realities are that other than an anthrax or a high explosive attack, radiological and chemical attacks, biological attacks can be very difficult to deliver. So it's a low probability but extremely catastrophic impact. So we need to be paying attention to those. But my work was primarily overseas, working to dismantle W&D programs. But we were just looking to stay ahead of the bad guys. It doesn't take many of those folks to be successful to wreck your day or create a tragedy. And the good guys, FBI, CIA, Secret Service, NSA, all of our agencies that are out there, including state and local authorities, have to be successful every day, to keep that from happening. So again, hats off to both my colleagues in law enforcement and intelligence services.
No, amen. Question, Kris, how do you find your customers? How do they find you?
Yeah, great question. So we've been very fortunate over the 17 plus years to build a reputation of trust and credibility. We've got a great presence in the industry. We've got a great presence out there, and I think now in our marketing materials. And people typically find us by referrals. So good work, begets good work, and we've been really fortunate that people call and say, "I've talked to my colleague, my peer, my corporate peer, and you guys are the ones to do this." And so a lot of our work comes in referral based. We're getting now more work from our marketing streams, but so there's this element of, they hear of us from a trusted colleague. They do their due diligence, whether that's website or social media or calling around. And the reality is they reach out, and a lot of our work is not competed. They're like, "You're already been selected." And then there's a big piece there that comes with it, that we're trusted. Right. So we take that role of a trusted advisor extremely serious. We are to be the trusted advisor. We do not take that lightly. And we're big listeners. So we come in with the referrals. We listen to what the clients are saying. We listen to what they say about their pattern of behavior around their family. And then we assess what the real risks are, and we come up with an answer. So that's how we kind of deal with it when it comes in, and we want to be a partner to those clients, and that makes a lot of sense. So we get the trust element, then we have the pedigree, right? So where did we come from? What have we done for most of our careers? And that we've already talked a bit about that, but most of our folks are CIA, FBI, Secret Service, et cetera, military, and so there's the credibility, the pedigree, and then we deliver it, right? So we deliver it in a way that makes sense for the clients. We've got a level of excellence that we strive for on every job. We want to over deliver. So trust, credibility, and then delivery. A big part of the delivery is responsiveness, right? They're like, "You're the first client that security company that even called us back." And most of these incidents are coming at us because there's a stressor, right? There's an undesired event that has happened. And so that's a big piece of that. Credibility, building the trust, and then we've got this ability to execute, and that's really gone a long way.
Are you generally help me understand, or help the audience understand? You said you've worked with half of the Forbes 20 list at some point,
right?
And I've
changes,
also
right. So it changes and
it moves around,
right.
But I'm just saying. So there's a luxury consumer family that needs help. I mean, I can only imagine the infinite number of risks. In your book, you call them jackals,
Right.
that are out there that that could go after them. And then you also mentioned corporate. So I'm just curious, how do you, maybe what is that split, or how do you think about, how do you help the luxury family versus corporate, and what does your business look like today in terms of that split?
Right. So we're probably about 50-50. I mean, probably, shifts 60-40 from time to time, but, we really, we came into this thing knowing that that was going to be the kind of clients that we needed to service. They have really unique challenges. They're typically in multiple continents. They've got multiple potentials, avenues of attack for adversaries. They're high profile targets, whether they think they are or not. There's a lot of assets that are available to attack. And the reality is they all need, whether you're corporate or you're a high net worth family or private family, just in general, they all need privacy, security, and resiliency. And those are our three business lines, our service lines. And so, we've done security now I've been doing security now for 30 years. So security, we know it really well. We know it in different countries. We know it in different disciplines, whether it's investigations, executive protection, due diligence, design and engineering, safe rooms, cyber, operational security, travel, mobility. So many different things are on the security front. But what we found in recent years in the rise of the cyber issue is privacy has now become extremely urgent issue with our families, both on the corporate side for compliance and data protections, but also then on the private side for identity, right? So dealing with identity, PII, information that would reveal anything about individuals, their families, identities, where they live, where their assets are located, or key information. So privacy has now become sort of a key issue. And then, 3 years ago, before COVID even hit, now we're talking about resiliency, and we were starting to do real experiences years ago, but the resiliency issue comes down for both families and corporate as well, right? So now we're talking about, for corporates, we're talking about business continuity plans, continuity of operations programs. What are you going to do when your supply chain is disrupted? Where are you going to go when you can no longer come into the office because there's a pandemic? What is your IT strategy for that? What is your operational strategy for that? So all these things around resilience around corporations is squarely in our space. And then for families, we're talking about several things, right? So it's not only, the residents, it's not only the second or third residents, it's also mobility. How do they move around? But we're talking about the family legacy and what's going on with the family offices, because what we do know is that 70% of family wealth is not passed on to the next generation. So what's going wrong there, right? There's an element there of protecting the legacy. There's an element there of leadership. There's an element there of team building, skill building. And we get into that in the book about, what are the 5 pillars of resiliency, awareness.
Well, let me share that. Just the audience is hearing you talk about the book. So let me get I want to just put the name and the,
great.
I'm going to put it up on the screen here. There we go. Let's see if technology behaves here. Is that it? Awesome. So Raise Your Resiliency. That's actually the book that I picked up and that I'm almost through. And I think it's fascinating, but continue please. But I just wanted to show the audience, and for those listening, the name of the book is Raise Your Resiliency by Kris Coleman. And your previous book is Shield Your Privacy by
the previous book is written by Heather Nickerson, one of our other execs. But that came out of this whole concept we talked about with privacy, and we needed something to share with families, because we do so much effort around educating and bringing them around their awareness around privacy, and we can talk a little bit about that. But the resiliency book, so Raise Your Resiliency, it came out of the third stool, the third leg of the stool. Yeah, and the concept there is that you need to be able to bounce back from adversity, right? So the concept applies both to individuals, it applies to families, and it applies to corporations. So what we say is there's sort of a 5-3-1 system of resiliency, and the assumption there is that there's one goal, and everybody's goal is to be successful. Your goal is to survive and thrive. That's the one goal for everyone. Doesn't matter who you are. You could live in
universal.
Yeah, it's universal. You can live anywhere and you want to do that. But I also put forth that there are 3 critical units. There's the individual, there's the family, and then there's the business. And the concept there is you need to apply the 5 pillars to all 3 units to achieve the one goal, to survive and thrive. And then that's where the bulk of the book spends its time, is on the 5 pillars and how they apply to the 3 critical units. And really, it was a lot of study. It was a lot of experience, a lot of things that we had been trained on in the government, both agencies, and a lot of my colleagues, and interviewing my colleagues and looking back on what we had been trained in. It's like, you know what, there are really 5 things that matter. And those 5 pillars are articulated in the book. And the first being awareness. And you got to have, a real awareness that's based in reality, right? So we don't want you spending time in social media and that's all you do. You're not going to get ground truth of what's going on around you in your neighborhood, your community, et cetera. And so then there's the second pillar is really about mindset. And we went over this over and over again. It was really part of every training scenario we had in the government. And that is a survival mindset, a positive mindset, constructive growth mindset. It's not going to be, oh, we're doomed, we're never going to make it. This catastrophic thinking. It was really about, how do we, there's a way out of this. Let's find the way out of this. I can do this. I can find my way out of this, whether it's an illness, a bankruptcy, a setback with a family, a divorce, dealing with something going on with the corporation. There's a whole variety of things that can happen to us in any of the 3 critical units. So the mindset is absolutely imperative to have to get through a gunfight, right? To get through an altercation, to get through a pandemic. So mindset's critical. And then fitness, and fitness is a broad category, right? It's physical fitness, it's financial fitness. It's this element around flexibility. It's an element around endurance. It's not about how much you can bench press or how far you can run or how fast you can run, but have you set up your personal finances correctly? Is your business, strapped for cash, and are you really able to surge into new areas? Are you not nimble in your business? Are you not fit? So fitness applies across emotional, mental, physical, financial aspects of all 3 critical units. And then we get into skills, and that's where the real experiences get a lot of fun, right? So now we're talking about skills. So what kind of skills do you need? Light a fire, change a tire, winter survival, desert survival, working through urban escape challenges when you find yourself in a 9/11 experience downtown and you got to get out of the city. There's all kinds of things we can deal with when we're talking about skills. Family, it's about contingency planning. How do you get out of town when something bad happens? How do you decide when to shelter in place if there's a civil unrest in your neighborhood? So there's so many different things, and you apply it to your business, and now you're talking about what kind of plans are in place at the business. What kind of skills do you have as a CEO, as a COO, as a CFO? As a line worker, it doesn't have to be about being an executive, but it can be, what does it take for you to be resilient in your role as bringing in, the income for the family? You're the breadwinner. You can just be working somewhere and get a lot out of this book, which talks about, resiliency in the business realm, right? So it can be a breadwinner, it can be a singleton. You don't have to be a business owner or an executive to get something out of the book. But then lastly, and probably most importantly, are the relationships in our lives that make us resilient. The concept there being, no one gets through this world alone and does it well. And in the intelligence agencies and law enforcement agencies, we frequently talked about, 1 is none and 2 is 1. You wanted to work with a partner. You wanted to work in a team. And whether you're on the street as a law enforcement agent, you work with a team on a SWAT. We were on a SWAT team. Executive protection, we were executive protection team. On the intelligence side, we usually worked in teams, but frequently found ourselves on the street working alone. But the reality is we still had support elements. We still had technology elements. We still had all kinds of elements supporting us. And that applies in our private lives today, right? We have spouses, we have families, we have neighborhoods, we have communities. And all of these entities support us. Mentorships and colleagues at work. I mean, you can't get through the day without a relationship that really supports you and allows you to bounce back. Because when the jackal shows up, right, when they show up at the business, they show up in your family, they show up personally as a setback, as an illness, as a bankruptcy, whatever is going on in your life, you've got to be ready for the jackal. And what we used to do when we were teaching overseas, we would ask the students that might be, from a different culture and a different language, what are you going to do when the jackal shows up? And they were like, we don't understand. And I said, well, when you're playing soccer, right? When you're playing football, you have to decide what are you going to do when the ball comes to you. And in baseball, we always did the same thing here in the U.S., right? What are you going to do when the ball comes to you? You go into third, you go into first. What is it? Is there a man on second? Make the decision. So you're always prepared when the jackal shows up. So we used a couple different analogies there, but when the jackal shows up, what is it you're going to do? Do you have things in place? Do you have an ability to capital stream to help the business when times are tough? Do you have an ability to bounce back when you have a challenge at home? Family to rely on for relationships. What are your skills when you're, traveling across country with your family in your RV and you have a breakdown in the middle of nowhere? What are your skills to deal with the mechanical, God forbid, a medical, dealing with adversaries and crime on the street? So we really think there's a lot to be had here in the resiliency space, and our real experiences are set up to help private families and corporate leaders and individuals get more out of their lives today.
I'm not going to lie, Kris. I got real excited when I saw this. I thought this, my wife and son will tell you, I'm totally going to embarrass myself here in public, but like Bear Grylls and his television show and his shows, plural, and all the different survival shows on TV. I think maybe in a former life, I was maybe special forces, maybe a Boy Scout. I don't know, but the idea of preparedness, living through experiences, that resonates with me. And your idea of building resiliency in those that you're recommending this to the world at large,
right?
And you've taken a step in building this into your business.
That's right.
Resiliency-based trainings.
That's great.
So for my podcast listeners, I'm sharing the screen from the Red 5 security website, and there's a section on that site and it says real experiences. So I guess that what is real experiences? How does this work? And how should those listening, think about this? Is this right for them, or is this right for maybe their clients or people in their orbit?
No, it's great. So we really want it to be open to everyone, right? So obviously there's an element here of challenge, and we're putting you in a real experience. Right now we're looking at California, Utah, Texas, Virginia as locations. We've identified a site in Lanai for more of a tropical challenge. We're looking at places in Florida, Montana, but we've successfully run, a couple classes in Moab for off-road and overlanding that we're incorporating these challenges for our clients. And the thought process here is, we don't care about your fitness level. We don't care about your gender. We don't care about elements here that would typically be, and for some people, oh, I'm not fit enough. I'm not this, I'm not that. But the reality is everybody can become resilient. Resiliency is a learned thing, right? We can put you in environments that create stress. They are artificial in the sense that we are creating them, but they're real in the sense that you've got to execute something to get through it. And we can give you the skills to do that. We're bringing in former FBI SWAT, former FBI negotiators, former CIA, former Secret Service, former military experts to help teach this. And they're not necessarily those individuals that you would ever meet, but the reality is they're great instructors, right? So I've handpicked these folks because they can transfer the knowledge. So we're bringing them in, and this is an environment which is cordial. It's constructive. It's not boot camp, right? So we're not screaming and yelling. That's not what this is about. But the reality is we're bringing in adults and we're putting them in artificial stress environments so that we can build resiliency by repeated artificial stressors. So we're going to take you out in Utah, and we're going to have you, make your path through the wilderness to get to where you're going to be. But we're going to force a medical, emergency, and you're going to have to deal with it. We're going to force a mechanical, and you're going to have to deal with it. We're going to deal with navigation issues. We're going to deal with teammate issues. Who's in charge today? Challenges around navigating routes, dealing with things at night, dealing with finding water, dealing with adversaries. So that's just an example of a Moab type experience. We're also dealing with building resiliency skills. So you've got to deal with the awareness issues, right? We're going to focus these on the 5 pillars. So how are you getting your information? What do those information sources look like? Do you trust them? Are they accurate? Are you making decisions based on reality? How is your fitness level, right? If you're finding yourself struggling to get through this exercise, maybe you need to now reflect on what your fitness level looks like. Same thing with skills. Some people are going to come to this and like, I'm an avid camper, I'm a hiker, I'm good, no worries. But how does that go when you're faced with a crime? How many people have actually, dealt with criminals and adversaries? That's not a great experience. And some folks will find themselves, they've never been in a fight. And what's it like to get that first hit, right? So we can put people in environments where, we're not going to cause fights, but I
was going to say, do they get hit or do they get to hit?
It's a new environment, right? We want to put them in experiences where they haven't been before. And they're going to have to work with teams, which is a relationships piece. And then the mindset, right? Who's going to quit? This is scary. This is too hard. This is tough. I don't like this anymore. I want to go home. We have too much of that right now in our world. We need more grit. We need our the generations coming up that are going to lead this country, lead our states and our communities and our neighborhoods to be more resilient. And for me, national security, it's a big piece. Resilience is a national security issue. We've got to be more resilient, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's a electrical grid outage, it's a disruption of supply chain, it's civil unrest. We've got to be able to deal with this. And it comes down to the individual. And it's really important, I think, that we get these skills out there. And I've been fortunate and so very lucky to be trained by the best. And even when we were in the military, even when we were in the agency and we were, sometimes training with the FBI, we were actually given training by the military to help us deal with even some of the more, specific skill sets we needed in our jobs as intelligence officers and law enforcement agents. So we've been trained by the best. We want to share some of those to the extent that, obviously it's appropriate to do so. We're not going to give away state secrets in doing that, but a lot of it's common sense. A lot of it's stuff that you see every day, but we're putting it into context, right? And that's really critical here. We're a security company that deals with privacy issues, but we're also now dealing with resiliency issues. And I think the real experiences is the way to go. And they're going to be available on, an e-commerce webpage here soon, so people can sign up. And that'll be a great advancement of the program. But this has been several years in coming. And we've had a delay, obviously, due to COVID. But now
I was about to ask, what impact has COVID had on launching this initiative?
So we were ready to launch last March, right as this was coming. We had just wrapped up a big push on privacy, and Heather's book had launched, which is also on the website. And we were now transitioning to the resiliency part of our service line. And so we were ready to launch, but the reality was we could no longer get together. And that was really the key to this thing, was face-to-face experiences with your teammates. And so we had just wrapped one up in October the previous year out in Moab, and we're ready to start teaching. So we started to pivot a little bit to virtual, and that really, people are burned out and you're not going to get what you want out of that. So we said, we're going to wait on virtual resiliency training. And we went back to developing core curriculum and lining up relationships in these different states, because we know that, for some, travel's not on the radar yet. So these are all going to be driving distance for some of these experiences. But soon we'll be able to fly, and some are flying now, to get to these experiences.
Yeah, these look, are rates for these resiliency courses, are these public yet, or is that not yet published?
I think they are. I don't think they're on there yet. I think they're going to be published here soon. And we're publishing them kind of as we go. But, the reality is you're getting a small group, probably less than 10 or less. You're getting the best instructors in the world, great environments for training. We're not going to, put you in an environment that's not going to facilitate and enable you to learn. Some of the scenery is absolutely staggering, and leads to what we've had is feedback, about the experiences, and they're transformative is the word that we hear a lot. I never thought I could do that. I never thought my vehicle could do that. I didn't think I personally could achieve that, which is great feedback for us that we're on the right track. We've had people come to the class that are in their 20s. We've had people come to the class that are in their late 60s. And I think that's also, it's from the entertainment industry, from journalism. We've had people go through from corporate, from private families. And we're ready to get this thing out there. And we're hoping that, once these are out there on the web, people can sign up. We'd love corporations to sign up and say, we've got, 4 teams of 10. Let's get a purchase order in place and let's run 4 different classes, and let us, bring our own corporate issues to the table, right? Help us with team building, help us with decision making, help us with working together as a group through a specific challenge, or disaster recovery teams. Put us in an environment that's completely non-permissive and build a scenario around us. So we've been asked in some cases, can we make this scenario based? Some executive protection teams may want to say, let us land at an airport and quote unquote, fight our way through town to get to our private ranch. That's a scenario we can run all day long with our backgrounds. And then you get into private families, and it might be that we want to operate as a family. So we're bringing in, 10 adults from the family office and customize it for us. And we can put it in around, a 1 day, a 2 day, a 3 day, but we're also customizing 3 and 5 day experiences for folks that want to get something very specific to what they do or what they need. And we're happy to do all of that around the resiliency and real experiences.
No, that's fascinating. And in preparing for this interview and reading your book and navigating the site, I had seen this, but I didn't give it the time. And when you and I were connecting in advance, and I was like, that's what it is. This is spectacular. I can't see how that wouldn't be, really, really big. And it makes the topic of resiliency and security and privacy, that all of that, it makes it more accessible, I can imagine, for your business to a wider audience.
Absolutely, right? So people will come to us and they'll say, hey, can you help me with the threat and vulnerability assessment for my new estate? Or help me with the digital problem around due diligence or a cyber breach. And happy to do that. And then they're like, well, how do we not let this happen again? And that's when we're like, well, let's get into some experiences, right? What skills do you lack? And they're like, well, no one's really asked me that. We haven't really talked about it. And what about, talk to me about your organization, your family, and your business. And that usually comes down to, what do I need to do this? And we're going to get the adventure seekers, right? I've got 5 friends and we want to go do this experience. And it's going to be kind of an educational vacation. Private families may want to do that with a family of, extended family. Let's go do a vacation for 5 days in Moab and have experiences and challenges. We can do that. But I think there's an element of services that leads to resiliency experiences, real experiences. And there's an element of real experiences, but now they've been with us for 5 days in the tropical environment, the winter environment. And they're like, we really trust you, right? We trusted you before, but now you've taken us through this challenge, right? You've taken us through this gauntlet of how do we get through these things? And now we want you to help us with our personal vacation safari to Africa. Please, send us some services for that and get prepared for that, both medically and security wise and digitally. And, digital is the thing that most people overlook, but we include that in some of our resiliency experiences.
Well, I'm mindful of the time, and I have a couple of maybe topics that are super top of mind for me. And I know our audience, dealing with technology in the home or in the office. And I'm going to mention a dirty word, and that's Facebook or Instagram, social media. How do these families that you're advising, how do they manage that they themselves or their kids or their grandkids being on social media, but yet at the same time protecting their family and not disclosing, their location? So any advice or maybe how you approach that without, of course, maybe you might advise, don't go on social media. Maybe that's the best answer. But what if you do go on social media? How can you protect your privacy?
It's a great question, right? And it is the world we live in. It's digital. It's intrusive. It's sometimes misleading, but it also obviously is hitting something in our brain that we want to keep doing it, and that's probably by design at some level. marketing and social media is in some ways architected that way, and that's just the way what we're doing today, right? We're doing social media, we're doing outreach with video. So for us, the challenge is the immediacy and the oversharing, right? So if you're instantly posting the fact that you're no longer at home because you're on vacation, that exposes the fact that your home is no longer occupied, and someone could come take advantage of that. So you're giving the adversaries information that they don't typically have because you're oversharing. Families get into this environment where they're, we're going on vacation next week. We're going to be gone for 10 days. We're going to go here, here, and here. So not only are you exposing the fact that your house is not occupied, but you're telling people where you're going to be. And if you are a person of affluence, you're now telling you that that asset is no longer in a secure environment, and you're going to be in a different environment, and you may be more vulnerable. And that's particularly of interest when we get into celebrities and professional athletes and corporate executives, where it may have active threats, and we don't want them to be, telegraphing where they're going to be. So we'll oftentimes will talk to families, and they're like, we don't know how the paparazzi are waiting for us in Cabo. And we're like, well, what are you putting out on social media? Well, nothing. Well, what are your kids putting on social media? Oh, that might be where it's coming from. And then we do a quick look for them, and like, yeah, they, the son or the daughter broadcast this 5 days ago that you're going to be landing in Costa Rica, and you're going to go deep sea fishing, and we can't wait to be there. And
we're going to be at this resort, and then we're going to go to this hike on this mountain at this time.
And so there's elements of time that are important here. So not only oversharing, but wait till you're back, right? Wait till you're, typically, everybody wants to post. It's that instant gratification. Look where I'm at, and get all the likes and the comments. But the reality is, go on the vacation, have a great time, take all your pictures, wait till you're back, post them then. And that doesn't sit well with the new generations. But the reality is that's the best practice on the security front. You could go down the path and say, don't do anything, don't post, don't be on social media. But the reality is, we're not going to stop children and some adults from doing that. It is the world we live in. And so you have to manage the risk. And that's where we come in with families. And it's a measured risk management approach that helps them balance risk management with living their lives, right? We're not here to tell families that you can't do this, or corporations that you can't do this, because they need to do what they need to do to either make money or enjoy their lives. So we come across as an advisor that explains to them the trade-offs and educates them on what is at risk when they do that, and how they might avoid that if they're interested, if they're willing to take those measures. And that, I think, has been really important for us.
Kris, we've had a number of comments throughout the show here, but I'm just going to show one that Brandy just posted, and she says, "Great question, Ron. I'm so particular about posting any location-specific posts when on vacay or away from home." And then Eddie's an integrator out of the DC area, and he says, "I hate the information or the amount of information that people share on Facebook. This is definitely an issue, and we've told clients about this." Yeah. Do you advise, Kris, that, and this gets a bit nuanced or technical, but I think I'd read this at some point, and I know I did it for myself. I think I've turned information geotagging or locations off of my social apps so that people, when I am posting, don't automatically know where I'm at. It's so hard because you got to dive through the menus, and they make it so hard to do that.
Yeah. And a lot of our clients come to us and like, how do we do this? I got, and some of our families, we have one house, 42 iPads around the house, and numerous phones and all kinds of devices. And we talked about Internet of Things earlier, but this whole element of pervasive technology, everything is tagged, right? Everything has got some kind of a geotag. It's got some kind of other identifiable information in photographs that we take. And now all this social media is doing facial recognition. And, oh, I see these are your 4 friends in this photograph. We're going to tag them too. So you have to get into the menus. Like you said, you have to go deep into these things. And we can sit down with families, and we do this in an education session with them. And we walk through and like, this is how you're going to do this. But now you got to do it every time there's an upgrade. Right? Because it typically resets, and it takes you back to other sets of settings. So there's a need there to be disciplined about your settings. There's a need there to be disciplined about a new device that comes into the household that's got, open architecture, which is great for convenience. But the reality is, the integrators need to pay attention to that because they're in this space and they're saying, yeah, we'll put all this great stuff in. And you'll be, extremely convenient and you'll be able to connect to anything. Well, if you leave all those ports open and you don't actually manage the permissions, you're going to have everybody inside those cameras, everybody inside those.
Well, I want to go down that path because I've been in this space long enough. Worked with thousands of what we call integrators, and I know for a fact many integrators and many techs at integrators have access to not only the networks inside of homes, but have access to the cameras inside of homes.
That's right.
And anyone in our industry knows that they know this.
Yep.
And if I was a high net worth customer or whatever, like I'm not sure I know that, but if I knew that, I think I would be pretty concerned that is the case. Because although and I'll just say it, our industry, it's a good industry and they work hard, but are they vetting every single person on their staff with security background checks and all of that to know that all of those people should have the license to look at all of the internal security cameras of a multi-millionaire or billionaire customer? And have you seen this? I mean, in your interactions and the way you're protecting families, is this something I'm assuming you're getting into?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think this is why families do ask us to get involved, right? And we're never there to replace the integrator. We're never there to push the team out that's already there. We're always there to bring value. So a lot of times, we'll come in and say, okay, let's talk about the totality of what's going on in the house, right? So what's the behavior of the family? What's the system? What are the systems being put in? What are the security systems being put in? And then let's talk, if we need to, about safe rooms, because those are a whole nother thing. And so this element comes in about what technology is going into the house. And a lot of us will be brought in, at least on our side, will be brought in after the fact, after the architect, after the low voltage system, the integration, the security systems have been put in. And we're like, okay, well, we need to tell you that those 42 cameras you just installed have, adversarial backdoors installed in them by the manufacturer in China. So regardless now of what you do, someone is going to have access that you don't want to have access. And then they're like, why didn't we know? And then the owner's upset because the integrator has spec'd something that has really got a massive vulnerability. And I know most of the integrators, that's not their desire to create something, never. But
maybe they don't know what they don't know.
Exactly, right? They're trying to create convenience and a great experience and this interactivity, which we totally get and we're not counter to. But if we're involved early, just as a side consultant, we can say, what kind of cameras going in here? The client has a security, vested interest in security. Some clients don't care, and that's great, right? They're wide open to that. But some clients really do care. And if you bring us in, we can say, let us take a look at the devices that have been spec'd for this job and let us help you make the best choice. That's kind of where we're a great partner. Whether you're a construction company, you're an architect, you're an integrator, you're a designer, all of those pieces have elements of security. We've helped architects deal with lines of sight, blast protections, things that are hiding in plain sight that will protect people from security issues, but you don't see them because we've hidden them well. And same thing for integrators. If we do this early in the specifications, we can be a big help in avoiding vulnerabilities that are built into a system. And we want to be that partner. That's the role we can play. And it's not a heavy lift. We can come in and do a threat assessment and give really good advice on that.
Do you find, Kris, that you are brought in early at architectural stage of projects? I'll just say if there's construction involved on that side of the, you mentioned safe rooms. Clearly that's an architectural element of the home that needs a tremendous amount of forethought. Are you finding that you get brought in, or does it not always work that way? I mean, what's best?
It's best to be in early. I mean, even in the jobs, you and I worked with early on, I mean, the earlier we're in, the easier it's going to be to avoid, what would I say, undesired outcomes, inadvertent mistakes. And we've worked with one recently and they're like, this is the room. This is the safe room. I'm like, okay, that's the worst room in the house. You should not have picked that room. And they're like, well, that's the room we want. I'm like, well, okay. And the reality was you couldn't use it. It wouldn't support the weight. It was tactically the poorest choice in the house. It was disadvantaged for the owners. There's a whole myriad of reasons why the electronics can't get to that room.
But I'm curious, how did it become the safe room in the customer's eyes? Was this an architect deciding that?
It was like either it ends up being like the family has said this is the room. Okay, well let's have an education session with them and we can help them pick a different room. Or this is element of, I already know the bad guys are coming in the black helicopters and we're going to go to this room because they're misinformed about the threat. Or the architect, as a default, without maybe history or knowledge of safe rooms, has just selected the room because they think it's the one to use. And then you get into issues like, all the walls are already sealed up, so we're going to retrofit this room, and that's a disaster because it won't support the weight. The ballistic panels won't work, or whatever the mitigations are going to be. And then there's all the integration issues, right? People want to run the existing security system right into the safe room, and we don't recommend that. There's a whole other thing we need to be doing around safe rooms and the integration of technology. So we're always in late. We always want to be in early. We do so much better. The family is so much happier when we're brought in early in the design phase. And frankly, we can advise on the architectural aspects. We can advise on construction materials. We can advise on placement of safe rooms. And then ideally what we do a lot of is advise on technology.
You and I worked on a job together back in 2010. And I remember how much I learned about safe room design and architecture by sitting in on, I didn't get to sit in on all your meetings, but I sat in on some of your meetings. And I mean, inside, I was like a kid in a candy store. I was like, oh, this is such neat stuff to learn about. I mean, it's scary when you think about why it needs to exist.
Yeah.
That's terrifying, in fact.
Yeah.
But just the science and, a lot of the logic that you and your team put into what happens and why, it's really fascinating.
It doesn't have to be expensive, right? If it's built to the threat, it can be a $10,000 upgrade. It could be $1 million upgrade. But, that's the thing. We get in early, we can really help on getting the cost right and it's built right.
Another quick topic here, and I'm mindful. I'm almost at the hour mark here, so I've got so many more fun things to talk to you about. But I won't do that for our audience. I know we have to keep it nice and tidy. IoT, the world of Internet of Things. It seems like the world is going to the reality where, everything in your house is going to have an IP address at some point.
Right.
I was in a conversation. I'm in so many every day. I don't remember, but it was in the last week or two. And it was regarding a major appliance brand. And they said I want to say in the next 2 to 3 years, they will not sell any appliances that do not have an internet connection. And so it's just, the world is going to where everything in your house is smart. It's out there with an IP address. It maybe is listening. It maybe is watching. It maybe is reporting. It maybe is geotagging, right? How in the world do you protect your clients when the world seems in an exponential fashion to be going, frankly, against the theme of protecting the privacy of your clients?
Yeah. I heard this. You're exactly right, Ron. What I heard the other day was I want to say, and I may not get this right, 3 million devices in a cubic kilometer in a dense urban environment. So 1 cubic kilometer, 3 million devices that are connected. It's unreal, right? So how do you connect? How do you protect them? For certain environments, frankly, we say go analog, right? So for the bedroom, go for a specific office. This is a smart device no-go area. You might have an internet connection. You might have a laptop. You might have a tablet. You might have a smart TV. But then you've now decided that those items are going to be dumbed down, right? You make the choice on the settings. You may firewall some of them off from the internet altogether just for protections. We're a big fan of going analog when it's important. So for certain rooms, we'll suggest we do technical security countermeasure sweeps. So for the bedroom, for the home office, it's really been important during COVID is those corporate execs and all those workers are back working on an unprotected home network. And now you've got the smart assistant, you've got the smart teddy bear toy, you've got the other security systems in the house that may not be locked down.
All of those houses must be like honeypots for bad guys wanting to get corporate secrets.
Yeah.
Where the office used to be locked down, and now you have all of the individuals, all the corporate execs are in their houses.
That's right.
Where none of those rules or protections are in place.
Right.
That has to be terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, we have to really, tell clients, it's like, you know what, if you're going to work in that room, take the Alexa out of the room, take the Google Assistant out of the room, take the whatever the device is, right? Brand agnostic, take it out of the room, close the door, and work in that environment without some sort of smart device. But you got to kind of really look around and go, what about that refrigerator? What about the washing machine? What about the kid's tablet that is now?
You had mentioned to me before we went live. What about that TV? Is it watching me and reporting that out somewhere on the cloud?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, we go analog in some cases, and we put, take a piece of tape and put it across the laptop camera when you're not using it. I mean, we've done that with our items we give away for Red 5 is Red 5 camera covers for laptops. We tell people that, in the government, we used to leave all of our devices outside of the special spaces. It's just the way you do things. And we do that now for some of our other projects. It's just important to not have the connectivity in the room. And it's not going to stop, but we are a big fan of the analog solution. Take the device out of the environment. And when you travel, you're in a new environment altogether, right? So now you're in that luxury hotel room overseas. You don't know where the cameras and the microphones are because the nation state probably has already rigged that hotel to watch the foreign travelers. And you need to really pay attention to when you find yourself in a foreign environment or an environment that's not your normal environment. So it could be Miami, it could be Denver, it could be LA, whatever, but it could also be China, Russia, South America, wherever. And the reality is that some of those places are extremely wired for surveillance. And what you may think is a pretty innocent thing going on, and now it's been totally recorded by the local government, and they're going to use it against you. So we know that executives are targets. We know that Americans and Westerners are targets for collecting of surveillance and information. And so it goes everywhere from your router in your home office to your smart TV in your foreign hotel room. You've got to be on top of this stuff. And we tell people when you travel overseas, a legal pad and a pencil works really well. If you really want to go totally analog, and use a voice only phone. But there's elements to raising your profile by doing those things. There's elements to using encryption that you don't want to do when you travel, because that's going to raise your profile. So, but we get into that. We advise folks on travel, corporations on travel, as well as privacy, security, and resiliency issues. In the end, Ron, what we really want to do is ensure bad things don't happen to good people, and that's the core of who we are as a company and what we really want to continue to do.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to share that again, your screen on your website. Right on the homepage, it says, ensuring bad things don't happen to good people. Well, I think the world is better, Kris, because you and your team are here and protecting us and or protecting those that you can protect. And thank you for all of your years of service, and to all of your team members, all of their years of service to protecting the United States. Definitely greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Ron.
Kris, thank you for coming on the show. What is the best way for those that are out there listening or watching and they want to learn more about you or your firm? What's the best way to get in touch?
So we're great at the website, obviously, which is www.red5security.com. So that's red5security.com. We're great on LinkedIn, easy to connect there. You can find us on LinkedIn. And then you can catch me on my email at Kris@red5security.com. And that's KRIS.
Here I'm jumping over to LinkedIn. Again, for those that are watching, you see the Red 5 LinkedIn profile. And on LinkedIn, Kris, do you want people following Red 5 or do you want them connecting with you directly? How do you like to operate there?
Oh, I'm good with either. We're highly responsive. Happy to partner, team, work with whatever people need. We're just that responsive group. So whatever works.
Well, it's been many years, but I can tell you on the projects that you and I did together, I was in awe and frankly taking notes on the professionalism of how you carried yourself and how you represented your firm. So for anyone out there listening that needs a security consultant, advisor in their portfolio of go-to people, I could not imagine a better person out there than Kris and his team. And this is I chased Kris down, by the way, to be on this show. He did not solicit me to say any of the above. It just clearly he and his team made a great impression on me.
Ron, the feeling's mutual. You guys are great, and I'm really proud of what you guys have done at One Firefly. It's awesome. It's a great shift, and it's it's really a testament to entrepreneurship. So congratulations on all your success, and thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here, and let's do it again sometime. This has been great.
We definitely will. Thank you, Kris.
My pleasure.
So there you go. Yeah. So Kris just made a reference to the concept of the pivot, and in entrepreneurship, you have the opportunity when struggle, or as Kris calls them, jackals, come after you. Jackals come after everyone. And the question is, what do you do about it? And at One Firefly, we decided to pivot and pivot and pivot and pivot until we found really a better place. And I can tell you, my life, I've never had more fun doing what I'm doing, helping my customers, than I am right now. And in hindsight, I can say I wish I had made some of those pivots earlier. I was too stubborn, couldn't get out of my own way. And when I finally made those pivot, you really see the One Firefly you see today, which is, the industry's largest marketing agency serving integrators around the world and helping them grow. So it was, his words definitely ring true to my experiences. And I definitely recommend go out there and pick up his book, Raise Your Resiliency by Kris. He's got just great content. He was talking about those pillars. Here they are. I'll show them on video. So there you can there you can see he's talking about the 5 pillars, and then the 3 units: personal, family, and corporate. And then the primary goal is to survive and thrive. I love that. It really rings true to how I look at life and family and business. So I love that he put that down for all of us to read. In case you have not already done so, please subscribe to the podcast. Right now you're watching the video potentially, because this is after the interview. So you're only watching the video. This bit of audio does not go out on the podcast. But if you want another way to consume the interviews that we do every week, definitely subscribe to Automation Unplugged. And if you feel so inclined, please leave us a comment. Good or bad, whatever that is, it all is, frankly, it all helps the algorithm. So jot those comments down and it'll be appreciated. And then certainly you can visit us over at onefirefly.com, or you can give us a call. So on that note, I'm going to sign off. Thank you all, and I will see you next